Hello, Chris.
Hi, mate. How you doing?
Not too bad. Well, yeah, all good. And good to be here tonight, Tuesday night. Even better to be talking with Philip Kinsella in a few minutes. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. How are you?
Yeah, really good. I think, do you know what? How fast does it fly the week? Before, it just seems like 2 minutes ago since we were talking on here last week, and time is absolutely flying by. Can't believe it, how soon it's come around. But it's good. I mean, I do the same when Truth Proof's on and some of the podcasts I watch, they do seem to come around really quick, which is great because I still think there's not enough podcasts out there.
There's not enough, and I sound like it's a boast. There's not enough quality ones. People will do a little bit of digging and do a little bit of research, try and mix up the guests, and get a variety on, because we're all about different things, aren't we? And I know our guest tonight, he's got a lot to say, and he's got a lot of sense to speak as well, as so does his brother Ronald. But yeah, before we jump into that, because I mean, we'll be soon heading up to 100 people in chat. Do you want me to shout a few names out here?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Well, good to see you guys first and foremost. Thanks for support. We did say, or Chris did last week, do you want us to consider moving it to Friday? I don't know how's that day suit you, Chris? Is Tuesday better for you, Friday, or doesn't it matter?
I think Friday is probably better for me personally, just because I can wind down a little bit. Still in work mode, and I think some people are still in work mode on Tuesday. But at the same time, Tuesday, I think for some people, it's nice to have a show or podcast, something to look forward to. But yeah, Friday would be good for me personally, but I'm easy.
Yeah,
I'm easy.
Well, it probably would work for me as well, because I'd only be an hour later and meeting lads, because we do get up to some locations on a Fridays. But yeah, let's just jump to it. We've got Adam Sandor, Brett Biro Artist, Magsu, Rod, Mike Disabled Welshman, Martin Abbas, Rivington Pike Beast, that's Lee, Tonya Morrison, Awake, Dragonborn, good to see you, Stephen Colling, great to see you, Stephen, and Simon Riley, and Rod. And as the names, Adam Sandor, we've done that. And as the names roll through, because that's all I can see at the moment, and we've got over 60 people in chat now, and I've probably said 20 names. Tom Waters, always good, great supporter of Truth Proof and Last Transmission. Good to see you guys. William Nelson, and any people new to Last Transmission, or even if you're not new and you've watched last Transmission, remember to press the like and subscribe. It's not an order. You don't have to do it, but it's totally free. And it just supports us, because Chris is giving a few hours of his time. I am. So is Philip when we get him on. So, it's a no-brainer for me. You like watching the streams, have a go at pressing the like and subscribe, and we'd appreciate it. I think that's right, Absolutely. Chris, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, your support is really appreciated. Yeah, so and hopefully over this next year we can try and grow this, and and actually do some live stuff, some live investigation for you as well, because that's something we're talking about doing as well. So yeah, lots of stuff coming, guys. Yeah, so just keep supporting us. Much appreciated.
That would be brilliant. And I've got some pictures. Well, obviously, see pictures of Wolflands, Night People, and when we do a few competitions and quizzes and things. I'll get some of these printed off and just sign them, or me and Chris can sign them. It might be things that you want, it might not be, but if that's kind of things you're interested in, we'll just give them away as freebies. They don't cost me a lot, so it's all just things that might, I don't know, if you've got your little room where you or devote to your UFO material and cryptid material, you might just want things like that, or you might not want to look at me. I can understand that. So let's bring on our guest, Chris, if you want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And welcome, Philip Kinsella.
Hello, Paul and Chris. It's an honor to be on the program. Thank you very much indeed.
No, it's fabulous. We're absolutely thrilled, as always, to be talking to you. And for those that have been under a stone, maybe overseas people might not know, but in British ufology, British unexplained phenomena, Philip and Ronald Kinsella, the Kinsella twins, are very well known and very well thought of, not just for the research you do, but you're just all round decent people. And that's what makes it so good to be speaking to you tonight. And we're going to be covering some of the topics that you've included in your book, Terrestrial Trespassers, and Ronald's book, Illusions, because I think, it's as much a part of this research as you are. Well, I know it is, because you come as a twosome, really. So welcome from myself and Chris. So where to start? Would you want to kick this off, Chris?
Yeah, I think we just asked Phil, because obviously everybody in here, or most people in here, and we've just been having a chat off air really about I don't really want to use the word revelation, because the latest wasn't really a revelation, was it? However, it was interesting. So I think we should spend 5-10 minutes chatting about the egg, you know, the latest revelation from the helicopter pilot that did the recent interview with Ross Coulthart. I don't know if you guys in the chat and what you guys think of this. Would be interested to know. So just feel free, post your comments in the chat and let us know what you thought about that. Philip, did you have a chance to watch that? Have you seen anything about that? And really, what are your thoughts about really what's happened in the last month?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. And, you know, I think most people that's involved or interested in ufology would have come to have known about this case. And of course, Ross Coulthart, I was very honored to have had some emails from him a while back talking about UFO research, and long before this episode transpired. Now, what's interesting is that we have this footage of this helicopter that is having an egg-shaped device suspended from a long piece of rope, covered in a little bit of tarpaulin, cradled and being gently brought to the ground. We don't know, as we said before, where this footage was taken or indeed who released it. And we're told that the pilots who actually released this footage, you know, basically a whistleblower, is putting himself and maybe the others in jeopardy. It could prove one of two things. First of all, I don't believe that it is one of the most dramatic scenes or footage of a UFO. You know, in light of the evidence, the limited evidence that we have, or of where this was taken, you know, where it was placed. Of course, we won't know that. So no, I agree with you, gentlemen. I think that this is not the most spectacular in terms of evidence, as it were. And it reminded me of the Sirocco case back in the early years, of where you know, one was seen landed on tripods with a strange symbol on the outside of it. So we don't know, but it does offer us something, I think, at least, if the footage is genuine. There are certain factors that we need to cover, and one of them is that it would seem plausible to assume that there is a secret retrieval operations by the military that's in governance. But my question is, why would these objects and you know, always appear somewhere remote and not in vast areas? This is a question that we have to ask, and this can open up another dimension of inquiry with regards to how we see the subject matter. So why do most of these UAPs now, and unidentified aerial phenomena, come down in these remote locations? And as I said, I do have several theories, like many other people out there, why that is the case. But no, I agree with you. I think, no, it's not the most wonderful in terms of evidence, because evidence is being filmed every day. But we don't seem to get to see all of that. You, Paul, have been able to film, and Chris, some spectacular UFO activity yourself. You know, and when Ross said about the, you know, not just lights in the sky, well, sometimes they're not just lights in the sky. They are huge lights that come down, that are in the presence of those that observe them, myself included, on the 9th of April 2016. I will never forget that. 3 of them in triangular formation.
Well, you know, you're right. And this latest, I don't know, revelation, or this spectacular footage, because there were a lot of hype, a lot of build up to it prior to it being released, weren't they? And I don't know, is it just to, probably sound a bit cynical, but is it just to gain ticks and views and numbers? Because it's not, for me, it's not lived up to the hype. And there's a lot of unknowns. There's a whistleblower. All right, we can understand that they will keep their head above the parapet, but there's only so many people that can be on board this helicopter. You know, you know, and there's only so many people that are going to be observed operating a camera. So, you know, his identity is going to be known. So do you think it's a fact that it could actually be some kind of ploy just to dupe us once again? You know, I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
Now we're speculating, but all we're looking at is speculation. I see Deb's, and good to see you, Deb. Let's have a look. What's this? Could the latest whistleblower claim to have encountered the Range 4 Harry, who Charles Hall spoke of? I'll have to leave that one to you guys, because I wish you were here, Deb, to share that. I've got no knowledge of it.
Well, I think one of the interesting things that this helicopter pilot who Ross Coulthart, two things stood out really, and I've tried to clarify it today, but a lot of people do seem to be in the dark as to whether this helicopter pilot supplied the footage. I don't think anyone's clear at whether he did.
Okay.
The obvious question to me when I look at that is what is it filmed on? A Nokia? I mean, it's awful footage. Granted, they're claiming that they had to use night vision, which I think is legitimate. To be fair, I think that they would be using night vision, and from what I could find today on the internet researching this, they do still use NV stuff, regardless of what people think.
Just to cut across you there, Chris, though, because you're right, it's awful footage. I've used night vision, as you know, probably 4 or 5 years ago, which I rigged a GoPro camera up to, and that was from Iraq War.
Yeah.
And it was better quality than what we're looking at there.
Well, the idea that they don't really know whether the guy filmed it. I can't see that he filmed it separate, on a phone, because they're certainly not carrying the phones on these retrieval missions. Absolutely not. So they're either saying it's the underbelly camera of the helicopter, or a special unit that records this stuff. Obviously. Why would it be? They would have 8K cameras nowadays with
filmed it on an housebreaker.
Exactly.
Well, the thing is, we don't know how old the footage is. We don't know when it was taken. We don't know, the location, as it were. But I think it might prove something, at least, to suggest that there is some kind of military operations in vogue, where these objects are taken to some remote scientific military facility for further exploration. And you can bet your bottom dollar it'll be only used for their weapons division unit. That's all. For their own technological advancement. One of the big questions is the secrecy surrounding UFOs with regards to the Pentagon, and also with certain whistleblowers, because we're going around in circles, I think, in terms and surrounding ufology with regards to our understanding of what we're dealing with. And it's very suspect. I think I've been trying to look at the one major question as to why it is that the UFO phenomena presents so many issues. And we've said before, Paul and Chris, haven't we, that the acronym UFO, Unidentified Flying Object, has now been changed to an unidentified aerial phenomena. And we all know that, if this phenomena doesn't exist, why has the acronym been changed? That is a big giveaway sign. So obviously the system that we serve, there is a secret clandestine operation that's going on, that's protecting the public, or safeguarding the public from this knowledge. And once again, with this footage, as I said, we're going round in circles with it. We're just coming back where we started. We've got no definite proof once again. And of course, as you say, Paul, truth proof. We're after the proof, but it is truthful. But we can't get that proof, no matter what happens.
That leaves no proof. Yeah,
that's correct.
Right. And it's almost as though every time this cycle comes round of there's going to be disclosure, and everybody gets built up with the hype, and we all go along with it, and then we're kind of deflated. And the goalposts have just been widened, or the ball's just been kicked a little bit further down the field, and we're off running again. And this is going to happen again. This will happen again. The frequency of it might become more and more, because there's one thing that, unless they do decide they're going to completely censor the internet, and I suppose anything's possible, but it's with this mass migration, mass pollination of information that we can all get at our fingertips. If something's seen and put on the internet that's spectacular today, you can bet your bottom dollar that a lot of people all over the world will see it the next day. That never happened, did it? How many years ago? When's this began, Chris? When did we start to really get this cross-continent information that were just at the flick of or the press of a button?
What, the net, you mean? The internet?
Yeah.
What, 90s, early 90s, was it really?
Yeah, the one thing that puzzles me more than anything, and even going back in the day, is that our attitude surrounding UFOs has changed. Our whole mindset has changed. Going back into the early 90s, most people believed the UFOs and the occupants themselves were coming from another star system. Now, I'm not disputing that. But it appears that, as we go forward with regards to research, as it were, there's been a change, some form of transmutation. If you'd said back in the day that, UFOs were interdimensional, most people would have laughed. But it's interesting to see now that, because we're banging our heads against the walls, as researchers in trying to establish what this phenomena is, I think it's safe to assume that we could be dealing with some kind of interdimensional construct. And it's something that evades our science, indeed our intellect. And I've never understood why it is that the system we serve is so, against us knowing the truth. I mean, there are several factors that we need to address here. One is the creation, what we are, where we come from, because we have the Sunday school version within the religious ideologies, and we have the cold version from the cosmologists about how it all started through chaos. Now, that's another factor that we're not allowed to address, and anyone within academia that goes back that suggests otherwise is immediately, ridiculed or removed from the stage of research. The other thing is UFOs. What is the big problem? I always said this because we are a tiny speck in the middle of this expansive space that we don't hardly know anything much about in terms of its, structure, what's holding the glue together, so to speak. Is there an end to it? Is there, a beginning somewhere as well as an end, or is there an edge? And the same with UFOs. So I don't understand this almost childlike attitude towards the fact that we are on our own. And the system is so against the fact that we as the public are not allowed any form of truthful, open inquiry that leads to some form of transparency. So obviously, those in governance, those in the know, and I assume there are people in the know and above the chain of command, going beyond the military, they must know something. So whether or not we're dealing with something that's positive, that will lead our species out of this mental madness of this prison that we've been contained in on a conscious level, or whether or not there is something else that's being hidden from the public. So, and also we can talk about why it is that these crafts are located in these remote regions. I mean, do the entities put them down there deliberately for the military to find, some kind of like offering or gift? That's something.
In your words, Philip, the Trojan horse.
Correct, absolutely. And of course, without jumping the gun here, transhumanism, it's this whole subject matter of ufology is not contained simply to the nuts and bolts aspect, as most people see it, with UFOs or the aliens which we're trying to understand. But you'll also find there are major connections that have been severed in other areas of the paranormal that I believe, as you do also, Paul and Chris, that there are connections to be made. So where these subject matters have been decompartmentalized, this is kind of like contained any form of research to look outside the box in order to understand what it is that we may be dealing with. So that is interesting, and that's what we're looking into at this moment in time, of trying to put the dots together.
Absolutely.
Everything to me, when I look across the broader picture, the bigger picture, everything I'm seeing regarding disclosure, it all seems to me, going back to, I mean, again, I do quote Stephen Greer often, but I can't find an argument with what he's saying, something like you said earlier, Philip, about the tech and where the tech leads us. Because I can understand why you would want to keep the technological side of this completely secret, because it opens a massive can of worms. And that you open that can of worms, that itself bleeds into everything that of us in our society, every area of our society.
Yeah, program society.
Yeah. But the other problem with the disclosure aspects, and I've always had a problem with it, is that we all know full well nothing reaches mainstream TV without the nod of the head from the guy in charge. It's as simple as that. And I don't care. You can disagree with this, but I would like to see the evidence of and what your reasoning is for disagreeing with it, because the agenda is clear. Nothing. They don't let us see anything they don't want us to see. And it's as simple as that. So there clearly is an agenda here. And it seems to me, right in the infancy of this, it just looks to me like everybody said, it looks like they're after more funding, and so they can utilize it for their own good, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you know, Philip touched on the word creation earlier, And what we need to look at is the creation of the lie. When, you know, why has this, because you both touched on why the knowledge has been suppressed, but it's clearly, you know, and you get some people wanting to sort of trump that argument by saying, well, in 1947, Roswell, they had to create this massive lie that because of clearly a spaceship did crash. But I don't agree with that, because, I mean, there's all the opposing nations. They wouldn't have been in the pocket of the USA, of America. So the creation of the lie, if it is a lie, and why we've been withheld this information, must cross nations. It must be multi-nation. So if we do have the power elite, powers above all presidents and all kings and queens, above everything, then that's where the lie has been created, in my opinion. I know you touched on creation and evolution, but it just sort of ticked a box in my head, because some people say, well, due to Roswell, 1947, this is why it's been covered up, and now they can't expose the creation of this massive lie. Well, I don't believe that, because I do believe that countries like Russia and China would not think, oh, we've got to support America here and go along with this lie. There's something above and bigger than all of it.
Absolutely. And this is an agenda that's been going on for a very long time. It's not something that has just happened. We all know about ancient knowledge, especially going into the original codices of how it was from the Academian times, going back into Sumerian. And what we're seeing here is now in our day, and certainly going back into the decades, is a very different version. So, you know, as humans, the system that we serve, rather like the Wizard of Oz, you know, a beautiful story. But there was, of course, you know, the wizard itself behind the curtain. We don't know who these people are, or if they are indeed people who are operating and pulling the strings. Those in governance are just puppets. They're rewarded, they're given loads of money and power. And there does seem to be the suppression of knowledge, of information, because what they want you to be is a simple working automaton. That's all they want. You're just a cash machine. And it will tell you what you are to believe and tell you what you are not to believe. But the system has openly lied to us, because where they kept drawing this within the media cartel, going back into the 80s and ridiculing UFOs, or now UAPs, I will use UFOs if I may, people are saying, hang on just a minute, just a moment. We had some newsreels some years ago, you stating on national television that a UFO has crashed here and a UFO has crashed there. So what are you doing? You're openly admitting that UAPs are real. Now, so we can see, first of all, that the phenomena itself is far more complex than we began to realize. We've always argued, haven't we, Paul, that, you know, in a good way, you know, where are all these UFOs? Where are all of these aliens? Where are all of these cryptids? Where are they hanging out? The species of the human seems to be so far removed from all of the rest of this phenomena. And, you know, you'll get people out there telling you how it is and what it is. We don't know, but at least we can formulate from theoretical hypothesis to try and understand that we may be dealing with some kind of interdimensional construct. And it's interesting to know whether or not we're dealing with one main force or varied forces. Yeah. What I mean by that is that, you know, you have the dogman here in England, the werewolf. Paul, you know all about that. You've done loads of research on that. Where are they hanging out? You get people who believe that they are part of a military experiment, a hybridization creation, or that they are, you know, living in the earth. But the truth of the matter is, most of this phenomena, whether it be a cryptid, a UFO, an alien, or, you know, a ghost even, they communicate through mind speak. And this is interesting when we're trying to draw parallels from one to the other. So I believe that the system that we serve is absolutely adamant. It has programmed us. It shut us down. It's disabled that part of us, the unique part of us, that questions, that is able to aspire and lift upwards. And I've got some theories about that with regards to the greys also, that could be part of the instrumentation of those truly in governance at the top of the symbolic pyramid of power that is pushing us all down and making us believe that it's all just a load of old rubbish. There's no such thing as life after death. There's no such thing as UFOs or cryptids. You know, it's just so frustrating. But we have our ideas.
And I don't know what Chris thinks.
Yeah, go on, Paul.
But before we address that, shall we look at a few of these questions?
Yeah, well, I think what Karen's saying there are these things released at certain points to take emphasis off something else, whistleblowers and such. Who knows who has been compromised within this field? Yeah, that's a good point, because we know that they use distraction as one of the techniques, and I would say all of the above in regards to that. Anything you can think of, really, because it's interesting, Philip. You mentioned the mind speak just then. The helicopter pilot said when he was I think it was on a different mission, he was coming close to this object, that he started feeling emotional, and that he had contact, and he's had contact, and this entity, which he said felt like a female sort of energy, has been in touch with him ever since.
Yes.
So I wasn't expecting that. I'll be honest with that. I mean, I was expecting the whole spinning the fear angle, with this. I wasn't even expecting the pilot to, and he was almost in tears, this guy.
Yeah.
Yes. I heard all of that. And it's interesting because, if the system, let's say, for instance, that they came forward and they said, well, to the general public, we have lied to you. Well, they're not going to do that, but let's just assume we've lied to you. UFOs, UAPs are real, but now we've got a bigger problem. We've got to explain to you as the human species that you are more than just a biological automaton, that your history going back into Genesis is wrong, or shall we say has been rewritten. And now we've got a lot of explaining to do, because we are dealing with some kind of interdimensional constructs. It did remind me of a children's program about the pilot's description of that, Chris and Paul, called Chucky. And of course, Chucky, and it was an interdimensional being that communicated through the mind to the boy. And I kind of like understood, this kind of phenomena that does occur. It's the same with cryptids. Sometimes you'll get a dogman or a werewolf that will communicate through to the individual on this level. So it's interesting. But the major part of all of this is that, with regards to the egg-shaped UFO, that is not unique in the extreme. It's just that someone's released something that, looks quite clear. But again, we have little or no substantiation of those claims. And of course, every time something is put into the pool within ufology, it is under question. So, even for our case back in the 9th of April 2016, when my niece filmed those objects, no matter what is brought to the table, no matter what is given, it will be torn to pieces. And I believe that the phenomena itself operates on a very unique, singular process. So everyone's trying to squeeze all of this into the same box, and it will not fit. And therefore, I believe that the phenomena does triangulate and connect with individuals on a different level. And even with Rendlesham, going back into the Rendlesham case with Jim Penniston and John Burroughs and many other players, Colonel Charles Holt, the phenomena seemed to get to them on varied levels that was very different from one to the other. So we may be dealing with a construct of alternative realities that's coming in, and the person is translating it the way that they understand it. So it is fascinating, I think, really incredible. Your research, Paul and Chris, is second to none. I mean, Paul, you have captured the most amazing light phenomena, that you've put out there and you give to your audiences. So it's by no means unique. But the big question is that we still have to ask is, where is this base of command? And we know that it's United States of America. At least the whistleblowers state that most of the UFO technology is sent to the United States. And interestingly, just before I finish here, looking at the activity of UFO, what's going on with them, is that there are certain geographical locations around the world that's been of interest to me. And the United States of America is one of the largest area where most of these UFOs are reported. And then, of course, you have Canada and Great Britain, England. So I wonder whether or not there's some kind of conscious connection to this as well, too, rather like an opening or a portal. And this leads us into very deep territory and something we're looking into at the moment, because consciousness is a part of what we are. People call it spirit or soul or something like that. But there are two composites of us. We are biological, and we are also, if I use the word lightly, spiritual. So there are two aspects to us. And when we're looking at major components to the UFO phenomena, and especially drawing into the abduction phenomena, there are two aspects to that. One is physical, one is non-physical. So I believe that when we're trying to answer the question of what UFOs are, where they come from, yes, we see some physical evidence, but we also get a lot of light phenomena or energy. So I believe that we could be dealing with something that is largely based on an interdimensional construct, and something that will literally blow our minds wide open, and something I don't think the military quite understand as of yet.
Absolutely. And do you also think part of it, and because that's jumping away from what you've just said, could be that different nations will not talk about this subject as openly as the United States, as openly as the UK, or European countries, so, you know, Russia and China, maybe, and indigenous nations jump into the Bigfoot phenomena and the things that they would deem as the skinwalker. Many times you'll hear that the people, boots on the ground, who live in these areas don't speak about it to anyone but their own people from their own culture. So that could be part of it as well. There was a question earlier, and it was about, do you think, because this might be better suited to Chris or both of you, because I've no knowledge of AI, but do you think AI is helping muddy the waters of as we advance looking for bona fide UFO footage? What are your views on that?
In regards to footage, mate, yeah, I think it absolutely does. And at the moment, I think you can distinguish, because people that use it, I'm one of the people that do use it a lot every day. I think currently you can spot the difference.
Right.
But I think it is a problem. The flip side of that is that you can, and I have been utilizing some AI to help with correlation and patterns within cases. That's the benefit of something that can think, 1,000 times faster than we can. Sorry, that's not actually true. It can process that much more data than we can. We can think a lot faster than that, but you know what I'm saying. So yeah, there's pros and cons to it. And the one thing, I've said this before about AI, is that it's not going away. So we better get used to it.
I think that what's interesting is that anything that's newly created will be abused. And I think that the AI technology is smart. But this is interesting. I think going back to that dreaded subject called Roswell, what's interesting about that and the controversy that surrounds that, it is now so deeply embedded with myth that there's no way of telling truth from lies. But what we do know,
No, I'll just butt in briefly, because Sam Shelley's just about said the same. And that question's not being put up, but I was just reading it, so apologies. Carry on.
That's okay. That's fine. Because, we do understand that something crashed there, something unusual. Now, if it is to believe that an alien craft had crashed there, complete with bodies, it was something that was covered up. But before that, when Mac Brazel discovered the debris on his sheep farm, because he was a rancher of sheep, and he took it to the local sheriff's office. And of course, they then contacted the Roswell Army, who then stepped in, and of course, they took over. Now, what's interesting is that the military released a statement, even back then, stating that they were in possession of a crashed disc, a flying disc. And then, of course, they stated later that it was nothing more than a mogul weather balloon. Well, and a secret mogul weather balloon. Well, so secret, in fact, that even the army didn't know it was out there. Now, what's interesting is that I know that the book, The Day After Roswell, written by Lieutenant Colonel Philip Kinsella, who's now no longer with us on this side of life, stated that the technology found there was just within our grasp. Now, don't you think that's very strange? And I know that my brother brought out a theory in his last book about this being some kind of gift from some other intelligence, as though trying to steer and guide humanity into another technological age. And I know that Jack Vallée also brought this out a little bit later in his book. I can't remember the title of it. I'm sure I will later. But anyway, what's important is that this is to do with the technological advancement of our species. And I think it's also important that, are we dealing with a positive force or a negative force. And now I'm all in favor for the positive ones. I'm sure they're out there, absolutely. But there seems to be some kind of war going on, and what I've called a silent war. And I think it's very evident, not just from the secrecy of the UFO phenomena or our misunderstanding to a degree of our genesis that we're not really told about, but also a lot of the things that's happening now, because fear from the system is what's closing and shutting us down. And of course, the danger is with AI, very smart and, brilliant, absolutely amazing, but also I believe could be misused. And this is the thing about the greys. If we take one aspect of the tiny part of the UFO Department of Study, is the greys have always fascinated me. I've done a lot of research where I can into that phenomena. I call it the phenomena. And they seem to come across as very prosaic in nature. They don't have any personality. No feelings, no emotions. And I wonder whether or not that the human, the species, the model of the human is slowly being pulled to that level of being stripped of emotions, of being able to think, of moving towards transhumanism. So it's possible to some degree we can theorize that an intelligence is trying somehow to gear us into this new level of development, as it were, because transhumanism is real and that's coming forward. And of course, I think this will endanger the spirit, the part of what we really represent as the human. We're in danger of losing what we're about. You can see now the massive changes in emotions with people and the way that attitudes are changing and how the system is turning people against people. Fear, mental subjugation, control, shutting us down, literally. And that's the most annoying part. And stopping people from voicing an idea or an opinion. That's dangerous. That's very dangerous territory. We're seeing that even more so now.
And even the physical. You could imagine in years to come that our bodies will diminish in size because we've got machines that are doing everything for us, heavy lifting and everything. It's almost, and then you look at the greys. If we're to believe that these entities are some kind of species and not some mechanical or manufactured species by something else, they don't look like they've ever done anything physical in their lives. There's no body composition, there's no sort of muscular aspect to these things at all. And you said we're kind of being drawn towards that. And the way the state of the world, we're getting as though we want to do less and less because it's been replaced by machines, and
correct.
Even our thoughts are being replaced by machines.
Yes, this endangers the spirit. I did write about this back in 1996, and this opened a whole nother dimension of thought. Most people would outwardly reject it, but as I said before, going back, when we are studying the UFO phenomena, we have to take into account other aspects of not just that, but about what we represent as a species. Now, why I thought was it that the greys are interested in us as a reproductive species? And I felt it very strange that you had all these reports about the greys performing some kind of hybridization program. Now, why would a species that cannot reproduce be interested in a species that can? Have they themselves lost themselves through the act of replication of cloning, and that spark of divinity that we have, they have lost? And this is why I believe that when we're dealing with the phenomena, the greys operate on an interdimensional level of reality, because they can come through walls and doors. I mean, even and Chris knows, they've even appeared with the abductee on crafts and bringing their dead relatives on board, the abductee's dead relatives on boards, as though plying inside the mind. So I felt that what we were dealing with, just one aspect of the UFO phenomena, is that perhaps the interdimensional theory does stand, because these beings are able to come in and connect with the real essence of you and bring you into their filled frequency of reality that will be real to you, rather like a signal going into a mobile phone. That connects with one to the other from a non-physical, channel into a physical piece of apparatus. So I believe that a lot of the abduction phenomena and the greys themselves do open up a lot of questions, but I believe that most of the public will find it very hard to swallow if the system did say, look, we're dealing with interdimensional species that can replicate themselves into our reality on some level, because there has to be some kind of bridging between one to the other. And if you look at the near-death experience and what people have in terms of that connection, and then you take the abduction phenomena, there are parallels to be made between the two. Time is lost. There are various changes within bodily functioning from the non-physical to the physical when it's returned to this side of life, whether or not they've died, crossed over and come back again. There's been a correction within the molecular structure of the body. They may have been healed. And the same with abductees that come back. They have implants and all these types of things. So when you're dealing with this subject matter, we can't just reference one thing, because it opens up, as you said, that can of worms with a lot of other areas that we find really very complex and very hard to fathom. But I think it's good for us to think outside the box, or stretch the mind beyond the parallels of where it has been kept and imprisoned for so long within the world of ufology. So we have to look outside the box.
Thank you.
It's interesting what you said there about Philip, but the Greys, to me, that it would very much suit the agenda to acknowledge the Greys in some sense, because you could easily just say that these were a biological construct. Basically, they were an AI sent from somewhere, and you could drag that out for another 30 years. You've acknowledged that something exists. You've acknowledged something non-human exists. You could easily, maybe that's the plan. Maybe they could drag that line out for another decade at least.
Yeah, and I said the silent war. And of course, human consciousness is an incredible thing, because we as beings, intelligent, sentient beings, have the right to think and create. Everything around us, every single thing around us has been created by the mind. And people think the mind is a little box in the brain that opens and closes, and people call it imagination. Well, imagination is mind. Mind is energy. Energy is vibration. So when we look at, the way that this system is, and the world indeed is in a bad place, and the way that we're being systematically controlled, it seems like the agenda has been upped. And it wouldn't surprise me if those real commanders, those in charge, those nameless, faceless bureaucrats, even if they are human or not, those running the show, it's possible that they have a hand within the the Greys. Because I wondered, why are certain people selected? And it could be because if certain people are starting to think outside the box, or basically that their light shining brighter than others, those that are programmed, doesn't make us any more unique. They send their agents in to go and check you out and track you. I mean, that's a theory that I brought forward in Terrestrial Trespassers. And I'm not basing that all on the Greys. I mean, we have the good, the bad, and the ugly. But it's important to understand why this whole containment of the UFO secrecy has been put in place. So I do believe there's an agenda, and I believe that the danger is that AI, as you mentioned, will be the forefront, and that the human, the current model of the human, because it's gone through varied mutations throughout its inception, is being geared towards, some kind of mechanism. So I believe that going back into the past, into the antebellum cultures, they were saying a lot of what's going on today, basically, except we're in modern times. But that was modern times back then in the heyday for them. So, I think it's important to kind of consider that perhaps the Greys themselves are, they're here. People will tell you they've left. I don't think that they have. And of course, they seem to operate below the level of something else, as it were. So they're the workers, but you'll have people telling you what they are, where they come from, even their names. But we are still eluded. But we know that the phenomena is there, and it operates on a very multi-complex level of integration with us as human beings. So yes, it's quite fascinating.
Do you think there's a possibility that we'll stick to the abduction scenario?
Yes.
And the people who have contact, and some people have an absolutely amazing experience, and some people have a traumatic, terrifying experience. Mm-hmm. I personally think, I've no knowledge, I've no proof of this, that it could be an interaction by the same entities, and we're just in an experiment. And certain people with a, I don't know, certain attitude towards life, certain cultures or being brought up in a certain environment might be more suited to give the euphoric experience, and others might be more suited. Let's just see what happens when we terrify this person. I don't know, but I tend to think that when we talk about the greys and I see the similarity to what people would call demons, that we're probably dealing with the same kind of entities, just implementing a different technique on different individuals. I don't know what you guys think of that.
Yes, I did think about that, and also mentioned or made reference to, if the Greys had cancelled themselves out in the act of replication, or if they had, we know about the astral planes. Let's talk about that just very briefly, because there are dimensions of reality that, this also, the UFO subject also encompasses the psychic phenomena, although that may be uncomfortable for most people to accept, but it is a reality nevertheless. Remote viewing, you're extending human consciousness. Out-of-body experiences, you're extending your human consciousness. Could it be that these beings are remote, viewing and remote influencing themselves from their dimension of reality? What's interesting is that people have mentioned the demons, and we tend to think of something with horns, but in the modern age, it's just something that's been brought from antediluvian cultures. But it's possible that if there are lower astral planes, that these species that are devoid of emotion, that are devoid of all the things that we have that make us unique, that they are somehow trying to bridge the gap between their world and into ours in order to perhaps create a new species, a new being that's part us, part them. I mean, going back into history, it's believed that we were the byproduct and the original codices of gods, not a god. And rather like the film, Prometheus, where we were trying to find who created us and so on and so forth. And of course, in the beginning of ancient times, we were a product of genetic experimentation, Adam and Eve. And I'm not going to go too deep into that subject matter because that's quite heavy. But originally, our gods did not want us to reproduce. And of course, another one of the leaders, the gods, had us reproduce. And of course, that became a problem. So it's interesting that the Greys themselves cannot reproduce, but they are interested in what we are as sentient being. But it's possible that if they are demons, that they are somehow bridging the gap between their lower realm and infiltrating our plane of reality through possession, or found a new way or new guise. Because when you look at the Greys, they do look like they're a fetus. They look like they're still in the womb. They don't feel as though they're part of what we are. So I know most people will reject that hypothesis, but it's important because we hear a lot of cases within the paranormal of demonic possession, of where these beings are trying to take over someone's body. Indeed, the case that you spoke about, Chris, of this entity communicating with the pilot that came across as a female and brought him to his knees in terms of empathic nature. And as I said again, I'm not, most people label me wrong. They think I'm all to do with all the negative and disruption. I'm not. I am also understanding of the empathic nature of this. But it's important that we get to the truth of it and what's really going on. Whether or not, Paul, you said, interestingly, are we dealing with one whole phenomena, one mind consciousness that's able to, change, produce itself in the way that it wants us to see it? That is interesting.
And just to cut across there, and obviously I don't want to stop your train of thought, but that's what you touched on earlier. When you get a multi-witness sighting of a UFO, but you get lots and lots of different variants on what was seen and experienced.
And I believe that it's possible that whatever this intelligence is, wherever it's coming from, whether or not we have an issue with our space program that's lying to us and with its live feeds or not telling us what's really going on out there, whether or not it's a minefield of activity, or whether or not we are dealing with, as I said, the interdimensional theory. Now, this intelligence needs to build itself up into our reality. And going back to giving one simple example, the Roswell crash, for instance, the technology that was just enough for us at that point to kind of like get our heads round. If that was alien technology, we would assume that it would be something so advanced we can't still work it out. But we were left something that people have been working on and apparently, allegedly, helped towards the manufacturing of our computer age back in the 80s. Correct. So the phenomena needs to build itself or construct itself into our reality. And I'm always reminded of, jumping the gun here of Skinwalker Ranch, but utilizing an area where UFOs are seen and, and cryptids, where I think it was the Sherman family that came into contact with that huge, massive wolf, and they shot it. And when they fired a piece off of its skin, when they went to look for it, it disappeared, but the skin was rotten. So it's possible that the phenomena needs our reality to build itself, to construct itself into our reality, to gain entry, as it were. And this is why we sometimes get this childlike quality with regards to the UFOs. Disturbingly, sometimes, I think the way that the phenomena is able to trick or entice or bring you into its frequency of reality. So I think that's very interesting. Although there are so many subjects that we can talk about here, and you could be here for years just trying to, break down certain aspects. I am certainly also considering the fact that, when we're dealing with this intelligence, we are not just restricted to the UFO subject of reality. We have to look into those other areas of cryptozoology, of the paranormal, of life after death, of the continuation of the human soul, spirit, for want of a better word, of consciousness, and subjects that people are, excuse my French, dead against. So we have to be open to the areas, and you're finding that the phenomena, when you get involved in the research, it's not just linked to UFOs. There's so much more that opens up.
And I think Chris is of the same opinion.
No, well, they're dead against it because they've been directed to be dead against it. This has been orchestrated, the whole thing, like, as you said before. Before AI, they had think tanks running through this, private meetings, projecting where we would be and how they would do what they're going to do. So we're going to go deeper into that. But right now, I think what we better do is get some of these questions answered, because I've got quite a lot of questions, Philip, building up. So shall we get to some of those?
Absolutely. And just before you get to them, I saw that the amazing researcher Pierre Sabaxin, and everybody's welcome, by the way. Pierre, if you've got any questions, because I noticed that they weren't in capitals, bang them in capitals, please. And anybody who's not studied Pierre Sabac's work, have a look at it.
Amazing. He's just released a new book, and Angelic Invasion, and some interesting cases in there, and he's written about. Yes.
But back to Chris. Come on, Chris. Sorry.
Yes. Well, we'll start with Tonya. I mean, do we think that black holes and portals are used for? I imagine Tonya's talking about specifically at this moment in time about UFOs entering our realm, shall we say?
Yes, I think that's possible. I mean, back in the 90s, late 1890s, I got involved with Rendlesham. People know that's a UFO hotspot. It wasn't just attributed to the 1980 winter Christmas period of the military troops who were based at RF Bentwaters and Woodbridge seeing UFOs there. But it seems the area, like Skinwalker and like yours, Paul, in Bempton, around your area, there definitely seems to be certain areas or portals that draw this phenomenon, this activity, more so than many other geographical locations. And whether or not we trip it as we enter it, depending on your mindset, and then it's activated, that's a very good question of whether or not we ourselves, those who are operating on different vibrational frequencies, as it were, because we're all energy, and on a conscious level, and not, the program people. But giving an example, if someone didn't believe in this phenomena, they will close down that connection of conscious facilitation. Some people are too wide open; they accept everything, and that doesn't do much at the end. But walking that careful balance, I believe that the phenomena is aware, as you said, Paul, when you become aware of the phenomena, it becomes aware of you, and there is this integration. And an experiment we did back in 1998 on the 8th of June to summon a UFO, and I'm not talking about a light in the sky, I'm talking about a fully structured object that we had brought seemingly to us. So yes, it's interesting that there are certain areas, whether or not there's an area where a lot of minds focus, that allow there's some kind of opening consciously for these dimensions to come through and make that connection, or that the phenomena is aware of you and then comes into your space-time because you're wanting it. This is interesting. So it seems to be a two-way process between the phenomena itself and you, a structured belief in you wanting it, and then it coming in on its own accord. So that's very interesting, yes. But I do believe that, yeah.
Absolutely.
Lee Roscoe, why are all the whistleblowers sticking to UFO paranormal footage, and why all us? I think is Lee saying
US maybe. Why
oh,
all
why
US?
all us? Yeah, sorry, mate. Yeah, why all
I might
US?
be wrong. Yeah.
Well, hi, and Lee, thank you very much. Lovely to speak to you. Well, such as it is, we can't mind speak, by the way. But yeah, it's a good question. The whistleblower sticking to UFO and paranormal footage. What my concern is that, and I've said this before, is that we obviously have a situation now where there are people in high governance that want to come forward. And the really horrible part is, unless you know the individual, unless you know them personally, they are always and will be under suspicion. And myself included, with the cases that have happened to me and many other people. But that doesn't bother me, because I'm here, like all of you, for the truth. But it is interesting that there's this seeming control over the distribution of the UFO phenomena and why they keep pulling this wheel around. But something has got to break eventually. Something is going to crack. And I do believe, I'm not talking about disclosure, but something is going to give at some point.
Yeah. I think Deb Shaw's on page with that. I don't know whether you want to add to Philip's question there, answer there before we get to that.
No. I think well, Deb's moved us on there. I think we will make progress in the subject by focusing on consciousness and all the aspects of the phenomena that are considered woo. Absolutely. I think I was going to tag on to Lee's answer there. Just that is interesting that they are forcing cherry picking now. They're cherry picking the UFO, aren't they, or the UAP?
Absolutely.
Obviously, the following question from the public, and you saw it from some of the journalists, was, well, who's flying the UAPs? I mean, because that's obviously the natural question. But there's been little to no acknowledgement of any of that, which again leads me to think that, they may well use the Greys as, something to just drag this out. This is just some sort of biological entity that's been created, and it's AI basically, and we don't know what's behind it.
Yes, and I think, if we look back into the past as well, where human consciousness was deliberately subjugated by a lot of the religious infrastructures, for instance, witches. They weren't witches. They were just using their minds outside the box. They were made examples of by the powers that be, telling people, don't think, do as do, and have this fear invoked in you to shut us down. And we can see this happening again: fear, wars, control, mental subjugation, turning people against people. And the real questions are not being forever answered. I mean, at the end of the day, I think this will really open up that can of worms in terms of our place within this universe, of what we represent, of ultimately what we are, and our origins as well too. But it's interesting, isn't it, how the system will quite happily promote a belief, because with a belief, there's no way of measuring that at all. And they know that. All the cold, harsh reality with the cosmologists that, we live and we die, we're in a dead universe, which is a load of rubbish. So, I don't understand this species, and in terms of the way it thinks, the way that we're evolving. And we're not really evolving. We're not going anywhere. And I think in this time, in this space now where we are, it's interesting because the system is so cocky, and there does seem to be some kind of dark aspect to that. Because, going back into the heyday, don't do this or don't do that, that's witchcraft. Well, I believe that those at the top of the symbolic pyramid of power, I always call them the nameless, faceless ones, I bet they're heavily into all of that. They know how to use the mind. They know how to summon these beings from alternate dimensions of reality. They know how it works. And this is why they will cover their tracks by poo-pooing it. And certainly something that's distributed within the media cartel and the educational departments to tell people, no, you are just a human, and this is what is real, that is not real. And, so most people have been walking towards their grave without being able to fully access the entire part of what they truly represent on a spiritual level. Because we are seeing a huge connection now and a change within the way that people think, whereas before they would have completely rejected the idea of using interdimensional theory or consciousness, extended consciousness, as part and parcel of the phenomena. So I believe that whatever these entities are, or a fraction of them anyway, are working perhaps for those in power and towards their ultimate agenda, their goal.
Absolutely. Thank you.
What are your thoughts on RAF Macronash?
Macronash, the suggestion that it's home to recovered UK UFOs. Is that in Scotland, Andy? I have a feeling it is. And I'd heard that before. Some people had sent me some aerial photographs of, well, obviously of the land, but where they suggested that there was things concealed.
Yes,
I can't really help you any more than that.
I didn't even. I've never heard of it, to be honest.
If you remember, Chris, we talked, and I'm not expecting you to, but we talked a few months ago because I'd got an incredible cryptid sighting from there around the base, and I was discussing with you the fact that a lot of the cryptids, people love to call them dogman, but if you go back in time, you'll see that what people are calling the dogman, other people are calling the werewolf. But it's just a play on words. But a lot of the cryptids or a lot of sightings seem to be around military installations. And that's where that Macronash, if we've pronounced it wrong, I do apologise. That's where that came in. And the fact that people do see these unknown creatures around military installations, not solely, but there's a connection there, and I don't know why.
Yes, I think those connections are interesting because whenever there are UFOs present, will also herald the appearance of cryptids, of paranormal phenomena. And I wondered whether or not the original force that's entered our reality, i.e. the UFO, had somehow created some kind of rift or opening within the dimensions that allowed a seeping of these other lower or higher entities to get through to our reality. It is interesting to speculate. But again, it reminds me of It from Stephen King's It. I don't
want to jump into this too deep because we're here to talk to you, Philip. But do you know the triangle, the triangular symbol, and we get the triangular UFOs? And if we get the summoning of demons, the demon, and I'm not going to go too deep down this rabbit hole. We can devote a full session to this, probably with Nathaniel Gillis, because he's got far more knowledge than myself and Chris. But the summoning of demons, the demon will come through the triangle. And I thought about it with the UFO sightings, and you listen to people saying they've seen these huge triangles, and then you've got reports of cryptid sightings within similar locations and areas, and you think, and you'll have to Google these things, people, because there is a little bit of, I don't mean truth to it, but there's writings about it that go back a long way. So anyway, carry on.
Yes, I think that, with the phenomena at hand, it was very hard for me to come forward back in 1989, but that was not, the abduction in 1989 was not the only account. There were several other UFO experiences at close range, one with me and my twin and our maternal grandmother when we were age 13 with a silver orb that we call my brother calls the eye, or could possibly be what's known as a Foo Fighter. But of course, when we saw it, of course, it defied explanation. Was that a UFO? I always thought UFOs was bigger than that. And then this also led back to childhood with some very strange experiences. So you'll find that when you've been touched by UFO activity, you'll find, and not because you're making things fit, you'll find that there's other strange phenomena that seems to interconnect with that. So this is the big question. Are we dealing with UFOs or are we dealing with some other form of intelligence which is able to manifest itself into our reality and present itself how it wants you to see it? That is interesting. But what is the ultimate goal? In a lot of cases, I will say here that I was told by some people that the reason I had a negative abduction back in 1989, that I can still remember clearly with no regression, because I'm hard to regress and hypnotize, by the way. That was raw. That was really raw within its symmetry. And I paid a price for that, for coming forward. And I've never, ever, ever gone forward to someone saying, hey, can I be on your channel or TV or whatever? Back in the day, never. But they approached me, and I thought I was doing the right thing by coming forward and telling the public on national television that this is what happened, and then being this laughingstock of that. I don't want sympathy, but I knew what was going on. And I had a couple telling me some years ago that the reason I had a negative experience was because I was a negative person. No, I'm not a negative person. I'm a very grounded person with a curious mind, like many other people. And they had everything all worked out. Well, good luck to them, because I haven't. So a lot of the experiences we had were pretty fantastic, up close and personal. Do I have any proof of that? None. Absolutely nothing. But I'm more interested now in the research and trying to formulate several, like you, Paul, and Chris, like all of us, trying to put the dots together with regard to this. The experience back in 1989, I'm not going to go into detail, but Pierre Sabac, a brilliant researcher, and you must read his books, he made a correlation, a connection with the 1989 abduction that I had, that my brother and myself were involved in, not my brother primarily in terms of the abduction, but a connection that was made with what he did in the first part of that night and what the Grey did at the end or concluding my abduction, which was quite staggering. So we could be dealing with a force that's ancient and old. And indeed, we hear these reports from a lot of people saying, like, it's not new. I think that Pierre is absolutely correct in his assumptions and his research, which has to be heralded the same as yours, Paul and Chris. And I'm not here to butt you up, but it is astounding because we're taking a new angle to this and not, caught in this wheel that's going round and round and round. It's becoming tiresome. So we're trying to change the model, or trying to look outside the model of what we may be dealing with. And I always am reminded of Stephen King's It. And they do say that a lot of fiction can present itself as fact. And I will say that, in that film and the book, obviously the television series, it wasn't so much it was a film, but it was a long TV series. That was about an entity that had crashed from space and was using an extension of this being that it could manifest into people's worst nightmares in order to entice and bring them in. It fed off them. And there was one film that still gives me the creeps, and that was The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, and of course the prequel. And I thought about that, where the being was able to self-replicate itself into our reality and no one would know it was there. So this is another angle that I think that, I'm not saying, God forbid, if there was something like that on this planet, I'll be building my own rocket and getting off of here, because I wouldn't want to be around with that thing, because there was a scene in the prequel that made my skin literally turn cold. Amazing effects, but something that's quite, horrific. So we have two arguments. We have the love and light, and we have the negative part. But there again, there are two composites to us, positive and negative, as well as material and immaterial in terms of consciousness. So these are the aspects we're trying to fuse together in order to understand the bigger picture, as it were.
Thank you.
Scary thought, but I think there will be a time soon that evidence of life form UFO cryptid will be taken seriously because AI will have advanced so much.
Good point.
Yeah, unless of course you witness it firsthand. And it does appear to be on the increase. I mean, it may, as we've said before, it may well be because of the internet and communications being lightning fast these days. But yeah, good point, Sam.
I could point something out there. Sorry, Paul. You say first.
No, I was just going to say, because obviously, Chris will shoot me down if I'm wrong, but it's still in its infancy, isn't it? This AI.
It is. Yeah, in the public domain, I would have said they would say that it is in its infancy. Yeah, but we all know behind the scenes that way in advance.
Yeah, the UFOs, as we know, come from light source because a lot of the time they emanate light. Paul, your research indicates this for a long time with a light source. And as we know that light comes from vibration energy, and light creates, as we know. So not going into the quantum issue here, or taking out the AI concept, which is quite frightening and will be a reality, because no one will be able to make the distinction between eventually what is AI and what is real. Basically, this is going to cause a lot of confusion, especially with authors, people saying you've used AI to write your book or AI to create art. AI is going to be blamed for everything, and of course, at the end of the day, we're going to find ourselves in an intellectual cul-de-sac because of it. AI could be brilliant in terms of, offering us some solutions to medical issues. Absolutely. I'm not doubting that. But you can bet your bottom dollar it's going to be misused on a large scale, like most things. But, this phenomena, normally appears from light. I know in the abduction that I had in 1989, the start of that, before the abduction, the light coming through the glass of the door that started to make it pliable, almost like jelly, with the being that came through it. That was light. So light is important. Light is vibration. And when we go into vibration oscillations, they carry information. And we find that these vibrations come in from the void, or they call the field, because we understand that we are in a material universe, but we're finding in quantum that it's not so much as going out, it is actually going within, because we're finding more answers going within and looking through and beyond into the tiny aspects of what makes everything tick, what's holding everything together. And interestingly, when they go into quantum, into the atom, into particles, into the quarks and all the rest of it, the ways, you find that there is another universe. It's like incredible. It's like one within the other. And what's interesting with regards to vibration, what we send out, because we are energy, I believe that our energy signatures are picked up by the system. I believe that they have a system in place, although we can't prove this, where the system is able to see who is functioning on the normal level of their controlled programming, and anyone that is operating beyond that frequency is probably lighting up slightly differently. And it could be possible that the certain, we call paranormal phenomena or extraterrestrial phenomena, is then sent in to go and check these people out to see what's different. And we also then bring into the equation of the Earth being some kind of like holding ground, and that the other souls, perhaps from other systems, we have to be open-minded now. If you told me this 10 or 15 years ago, I rejected it, but we go through a process of transmutation, that other souls are incarnating from different systems of reality into the human model, to try and change whatever's occurring here on this world, and that this force is aware of it. And this is why we have this continuous forgetfulness, or this not able to recall the past, not able to recall past memories, not from here but from beyond. So it's interesting in terms of that. So, because I always thought to myself when I was a kid, whenever I was really positive, I did say this to a good friend of mine, whenever I was very positive, and I go out there and I say, I'm going to be really positive today, I found every single thing attaching to me with so much negativity that I gave up, that I went back into my normal thinking construct of like, no, I'm just going to be level with this. So I thought, well, every time I did this, it's like energy is like, no, we don't want you to be there. We want you to be down here. So this is interesting, because we are talking about psychological warfare as well, psychological programming. And of course, if you go back into the day with the good and brilliant Robert Monroe and his out-of-body research. Of course, the military were interested in how to get into this state and then gain access into the astral planes, those fields of reality beyond our normal functioning material world, as it were. So, it's a bit like Stargate, but you can see where they got these ideas from.
Here's a bit of maybe an hand grenade, but well, what are we? We're just flesh, blood, and bone, aren't we? We're just animals. So what makes us different? I wonder if has it been considered that this intelligence, you talk about our soul, this intelligence that wants to interact with us, what if it already is interacting with us? What if it is within us, and that's what's actually driving us and separating us from flesh, blood and bone, other animal species? What if we're all in I want to say a game, that's probably not the right word, but what if we're all just being used and manipulated, and we'll never get to the truth, because it is actually the intelligence that we're trying to discover more about that's actually working us and operating us?
Yes, well, as a human species, this model, I call it the model that we currently represent, because it has gone through varied changes, alterations. You can see that we're not from this world, because we shy from our very own sun, and we're not equipped very well to deal with the interplanetary connections of where we are. That is an interesting point, because we are so far removed from the rest of nature. We've been afforded the right to evolve, as it were. But are we under the auspice of some other intelligence? As you said, Paul, are we some kind of experiment? But there is something deep within the human, something real deep, that when you get into there, when you get linked with it, it shows you a greater reality. It shows you that we are much more than just biological automatons. It shows you that we have so much to offer in terms of creation, of love, of these things that we find hard to translate in language. And, and then we're being controlled by a system that is trying to shut all of that down. So there obviously is something about us that is absolutely unique, and that other intelligences may be using us as energy, as a source of food, as a source of something. But I still feel like we're trapped. I've never felt like I belonged on this planet. I know that sounds crazy. When I saw Star Wars, when I saw as a kid, when I saw Tatooine, I kind of like felt that I knew that place. So it's possible that we're containers of consciousness that come into the biological form. And the reasons, well, we can make all sorts of assumptions to that. But I believe that there is a war that's been going on. And this is clearly proven within the antediluvian cultures of the past. And it's all to do with the spirit. It's all to do with the soul, for want of a better word for many people out there. And with this whole control and containment. We had masters coming in, Buddha. They were masters, Jesus, as it were. I'm not going to go into the religious angle, but they were just like you and me, that opened their mind and thought differently and paid a price for that. But they were trying to awaken us to something. So I do believe that there is this cosmic battle. And although we can, we go to bed and we wake up in the morning and the wheel goes round and we've got to get on with life, I understand that. But the reality is we are all going to die. All of us. And that has always posed a problem to me, not because of some kind of conscious dissidence in any way. It's because you love people and you lose them. And it's like, and then you see them, you connect with them. And it's like, well, they can't be dead. And it's the same with the UFOs that come in. So what is this all about? Are we in some kind of cosmic zoo? And interestingly, Paul, I have heard that before from some other researchers about this alien force. We all have it connected to us. That's linked on a deeper level, a parasite, as it were, depending on our mental functioning and how we think, how we process our information. And rather like the force, the good side and the bad side, some people can be consumed by the bad side and some people can be consumed by the good side. So it's a multi-complex subject in terms of when you're dealing with the human psyche, you go into areas that's very, very, very deep and very complicated. But the reality is staring us in the face. There are two contradictions, not to us, but to the system that's telling us otherwise. Space, is it eternal? What's holding us together is out there, whether or not you believe it or not, it's there. And also UFOs. Interesting, isn't it? But the system says, no, it was just a big bang and there are no such things as UFOs. No, there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, Alice, you've just said a lot of stuff there, Philip, that we could get into for another 2 hours very, very easily. Because, as you said, this is sometimes I think even to sometimes ourselves and to the audience, it looks like we're trying to come at this in a very sort of one-dimensional way, if you know what I mean. We're sort of looking, there's multiple sides to this thing. Yes. And sometimes I think we're trying, it's like the disclosure, we were talking about it earlier. We can't, as you said, we can't just look at that for our answer. There's a far bigger picture here going on. Yes. And it's interesting that a lot of those areas that we once upon a time wouldn't have looked into as a ufologist, now we are being, if you are after getting a glimpse of the truth, you have to go down them roads. If you have to look at consciousness, you have to look at becoming more spiritual. These are the things that you have to do if you want a glimpse of it. It depends what type of a glimpse you want. If you want a glimpse of the phenomena, there are far easier ways to do that, I believe. So, yeah. So next question, Alison. I think something is making us, certain individuals, seeing things others can't see. And again, back to, I suppose, does that come back into consciousness?
I think it does, yeah.
Yes, I think so. I think that perhaps individually, that there is some kind of awakening occurring. The sleeper has awoken. It could be a good force that's trying to awaken us. We're not basing this all on negativity. Indeed, most of the accounts of cryptids and also UFO phenomena does sway towards the negative because it promotes fear. And, when you see a dogman or a werewolf, those that have witnessed them, Paul, you know this, they are terrified. Are you telling me that it's coming from a benevolent force? No, I don't think so. So obviously it seems to be feeding. Because I remembered you mentioned, didn't you, Paul, about one case where, was it you who said that the people weren't really bothered, and then of course the dogman just went away? It's like it didn't know what to do. So,
Absolutely. It's
but
almost like it has an intent. And obviously it's going to have that as an effect on certain individuals. Well, most of the population, I would think. But yeah.
Yes, yeah, but I do believe that on an individual level, how you see your reality is important to you, and this is the problem. Everyone is trying to squeeze it all in the same box, and as I said before, again, without repeating myself, it will not fit, because you, as the individual observer of your reality, see things differently from someone else. And this is why there's so much warring and so much division, because everyone's trying to make everyone see the same thing, and it just doesn't happen that way. So I believe that on a spiritual level, if I use that word lightly, or a soul level, a conscious level, we are understanding that we are much more than what we appear to be. And that's clearly evident in terms of the system's way in trying to shut us down or close us down. I don't have the answers, but I'm very keenly interested in human genesis, in the UFO UAP phenomena, cryptozoology, although I'm not an expert on that, what's more there, and also with the paranormal. So, if you are researching this, if you are venturing into this, you'll find that it's not contained to one department of study. You will be forced to some degree to look into other areas, because that may aid your research. It is an absolute, chaotic field, but trying to grasp small parts of it is what you could do.
And before we get to the next question, I think it's fair to say, because Lorraine's fielding questions tonight for us, that we're probably not going to get through a fraction of them, because I've seen them coming up. But Philip's and Chris's replies and my own they're a little bit more detailed than yes and no answers. So just be aware of that, guys. Don't punish Lorraine, because it happens on Truth Proof live stream. Alison's in the stream. She knows what it's like. And I ask my question, we get through what we can. And so Jane Louise Harding, formerly Bowery, have you seen a grey, Philip?
Hello, Jane. Yes. And the original abduction heralded 4 of them, although 2 of them, when I came back down from what they'd done, I wasn't to look at them. But one of the greys at the end of the experience that was standing in front of me was uniformed. I can still see him very clearly. He had a pointed hat, and he had this very smart uniform on. The hat came round, and he had knee-length boots, wearing khaki uniform, and he had his arms folded, and he looked kind of humanized, but still a grey-looking. But he was angry with me, real angry with me, and I wanted to punch him, but in that state I couldn't move. So yes, in answer to your question, I have seen them, but it wasn't a good experience. I can assure you of that.
Thank you.
That's Rod's question. I wonder if the NHI is trying to free us from government. That would be nice, wouldn't it? I wonder if it's trying to free us from government lies and suppression. I think, do you know what? I think a lot of us in the field are quietly hoping and thinking that on the quiet,
Absolutely.
I think
it would be great,
And Rod's thumbnail is best at night again. Once again, I love that swan.
I have to say to you that the non-human intelligence. Interesting how extraterrestrial has been changed now to Rod, not non-human intelligence, and we've said this before. Like, it's trying to bring the phenomena to a more earthlier connection, which is interesting, and not so much out there in space, but could it be in a space, or could it be actually on the Earth? I know some people assume that there could be a base under the water. Well, why not? Because there are places unreachable with our technology. But it's interesting. I'm not sure about that question, because not once has any of these entities helped us free this knowledge to the masses. Not once. And taking into consideration these, recovered missions of UFOs that are picked up, the phenomena itself does not want to present itself to the general public at large. I mean, I remembered watching V, one of my favorite television programs back in 1984, where the motherships arrived, and of course they were badass aliens. But I loved the series because they were there, and you couldn't doubt their reality. So it's very strange that the phenomena seems to secrete itself not only within the minds of the individual, in terms of the conscious embedding, where people aren't able to recall their abduction, so to speak, where such memories are secreted so deep within the psyche, it's hard for them, and sometimes it comes forward in flashes. And certainly it seems to hide itself from us. So I'm not so sure about that. I think, is the phenomena working to our benefit as a human species? Well, nothing's been shown of that. I think
it's working to its own benefit myself.
Exactly.
And is it trying to free us from the governments? If it wanted to, because of the impact, everybody in chat now, we're well over 100 people in chat, you're probably all here because you've had an experience of your own, and you're just inquiring mind, you're trying to find answers to it, like Chris is, like yourself, myself. If it wanted to, it en masse, it could solve this problem. I don't mean overnight, but quite quickly, by revealing itself. I don't know, at rock concerts, at mass public gatherings. It could literally reveal itself, when we know that we would get people saying, "Oh, it's AI intelligence, it's, I don't know, drones or man-made." But I think if it's got the whereabouts to reveal itself if it wanted to, this phenomena.
Yes, I know that Steve Aspin was involved in intergenerational links with these greys, and he wrote a book called Out of Time. And I remembered when we visited him, he came round, and he said that one of the greys, when he asked them as a child, he said, "Why are you doing this to me, abducting him?" And the grey that was doing its experiments on him said rather matter-of-factly, "Oh, it's because of your great-grandmother." So it's interesting. What are the greys looking for? There seems to be something that they want that they clearly can't have. And going back to the question of why this disclosure, because everyone thinks disclosure is going to happen like V. That would be amazing. I would love nothing more than to open up the curtains one morning, the blinds rather, and then see them all hanging out there and thinking, wow, they are here. Can you imagine how fascinating it was? They would be able to help us towards our technological health issues, spiritual understanding, but it's not happened.
Not if we were harvest time.
Yeah, but it's interesting. And Bobby, his question here says, Whitley Strieber says that meditation is like a light beacon. Absolutely, that draws them. Absolutely, because there's a two-way process. Interestingly enough, when you get touched by the phenomena, something opens up in you. It's like a spark of awareness, and when you get hooked, and Paul knows all about this, and Chris, you're reeled in. But what's interesting is that you find another dimension of yourself through this. So, I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing, because it's changed us. If we were not touched by the singularity, we could be just doing our normal 9-to-5 job, doing things you normally do, and then walk. And I'm sorry, it's depressing, but it's the truth. And walking slowly towards the grave without thinking about this. So something has ignited. So whether or not the phenomena, when it comes in and it activates you, and then at that point something's awoken in you, and this is why the system's curious, because the system knows the researchers. It has most people. It knows who you are, what you're about, where you are. It knows who you're connected with. It knows what you're looking into. And God forbid if you overstep that mark into worse and darker territory, because they will deal with you. And we all know about those cases with good folk on this side of life, some in the media cartel, who have met, unfortunately, with death, because they were crossing into territory they shouldn't be walking into. So I believe that meditation can draw certain intelligences towards you, as well as those in the spiritual side of life. So yes, your consciousness is a beacon, and when you start to meditate, your vibrations start to increase, and you're lit like a good one. So those intelligences, those light forms on the other side, those beings, as we call them, will be drawn to you like a moth to a flame. But be very careful how you deal with it and what you're wanting, because it's very easy to allow certain other forces to come forward, unless you're protected.
Good and bad.
Oh, Brett Biro, yeah, the artist.
Yeah, Brett Biro. Is AI in charge of the elites, or is it the other way around? Can it be controlled? Can it be contained? Yeah.
That is the question. I'm sure we've all seen the film The Matrix, the wonderful Matrix, and that makes us think, doesn't it? So we don't know. I've always assumed in my own mindset that the force, the omnipresent force that's here, has been here and is here and is running the show, and it is wanting to distribute this technology, as it were. And they call us all conspiracy theorists. So I think we're all, barking up the wrong tree. Well, let's just make a few things known. Let's put it this way. We're not, because, what the system is trying to do, it's quite clear to see, is divide human against human, culture against culture. It's trying to switch us off, eradicate emotions, eradicate creativity, and also now bringing in the AI construct, which is like, well, this is attractive. Look at these robots. I mean, they can tell you anything you want to know. How about having that plugged inside your brain? And, that's frightening. And the suggestion of implanting humans with some kind of chip within the brain to allow this to occur is not that far down the corridor, because it's been spoken about. So when people say, oh, don't think, it's true, it's happening. But it's interesting to see how advanced we have become with regards to this so-called technology. From the 80s, we made a real spin forward, and going back into the ancient times, it's almost like we're at snail's pace. Or were we? Because some of those epochs were brought down. They crashed, they sunk, destroyed. Oh, Atlantis, don't think about that. That's a load of rubbish. No, I disagree. The same with Egyptology, going back into the ancient times. I believe that most of them were very advanced. Even back into the biblical passages, there were wars and even flying machines. So I believe that the version we've been told and sold by the system is made for us to look at it as very old-fashioned in nature. I'm not talking about the Tudor period or anything going back then. I'm going back further. So it's interesting how we have advanced as a species so quickly, and this force is very patient, extremely patient. So, but things are starting to speed up, I think. So AI certainly could be the next
but
step
AI,
forward.
Chris, you might disagree, but I think AI will lead to the suppression of creative thought, because we will stop delving deeper into our minds to think about things, because we think, well, we've got this tool here, can do it for us.
That's right.
And that's a frightening concept, isn't it?
Yeah, the creative aptitude is very important. I mean, as kids, I was constructing adventures with my spacemen, with my, train sets. People laugh, but I was in my own world. Yeah, and I love all those things. And it's like, no, you need to grow up. You need to be an adult. Well, I am an adult, and I'm not, and I like to still connect with those things that bring me joy, that connect deep within the heart, within the soul. If you start taking that away, if you start eradicating that, you have got major problems. Look at the world today with a lot of the young. A lot of them have got psychological and emotional issues because they are looking at a phone 24/7. They're looking at a device. They're not allowed to exercise the inherent creative ability that they were born with. It's almost been stuffed out of them. When we were back in the day, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, you were still on your bikes, you were still out there with your mates and whatnot. But now what we're seeing is that the young now are being conditioned. And what the system, the evil system, is doing is programming and taking away empathy, emotions, and creativity. And that creativity is the source of the spirit of what we represent, because we are creators at the end of the day. If they take that away, we've had it.
Yeah, you're right though, Philip. It's interesting that you should say that, because this all ties into a lot of the stuff I was getting into when I was looking at the reptilian subject and the, and the the David Icke domino theory about all the dominoes going over. So yeah, and the creative. I've said this a few times on podcasts about the AI. I thought from the very beginning that there's some sort of something AI about this phenomena. It feels AI. It just feels like, and it makes sense to me that if you, I don't know, it depends on which path you take, and there are a lot of stories about ancient societies taking paths, one technological, one spiritual, and that would make sense to me, that if you went down that technological road, you would end up ultimately being controlled by one AI system, I would imagine. And that's the path, as you said, that's the path they want us on. And the alternative to that would be, a very spiritual. We are a very spiritual being, I think, by nature. So that would be our natural path. But as you said, you don't see them teaching, now and then you'll see them teaching meditation to young kids in schools. But if everybody was taught that, if every workplace had a 20-minute quiet place mandatory, all these kind of things to step away from the humdrum, busy, work life. And then, as you say, when you're not working, what you're doing, you're looking at a screen.
Yes.
Even me, that's what I do that for a living. And when I come away from that, I'm doing that.
It's almost reliant. It's almost like a part of the human now, isn't it? Your children in schools kind of having breakdowns when the device is taken away from them.
Yes,
it's crazy.
Yes, and if this is the way forward, it's clear to see that the system wants to eradicate or exterminate a great many of the population, and being done now in methods that are made to appear as though it's a natural disaster or natural disease or natural infection. I mean, going back into the past, the same thing happened with the Great Flood. The gods had created us and the humans became a problem. So we are led to believe. So history repeating itself. And I agree with you there. I think that, with regards to the emotional and creative stimuli that's being robbed from the individuals, this is damaging because it's turning the person into almost like a machine with no feeling. It reminds me of the Daleks and the creator Davros, because he created the Daleks and they had no empathy. And of course, in Genesis of the Daleks, the good story was, although it's fiction, the story indicated that he was taking away those attributes from the Khalis into the Dalek. So basically, even back then, they knew of the dangers of turning something into a machine that would end up destroying its own kind, so to speak. Debbie has an interesting question here. The Fae seem to be the middle of the Venn diagram of all the varied phenomena. Interesting. They have a great part to play.
Do you know that we're going to be a question tonight, and I talked about it to Chris, and I know Chris has invested a lot of thought and time in the Fae. What are your views, Philip?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we all know that Jacques Vallée, he's written a number of books on the phenomena. And I've always known to a degree that the Fae are quite interesting, whether or not they are part and parcel of the astral planes, because we have to understand that the astral planes, there are varied levels of them. Robert Monroe and other researchers have discovered this, lower and higher astral planes. And make no mistake, when people pass over to the other side, the experience to them is as real as the one they left behind. And the same with those who are abducted, myself included, or have these so-called interdimensional contacts, as it were, that's hard to explain. So the Fae seem very much in line with the Greys, where we all know that they would kidnap children, take them into a fairy ring, the child would lose time or sometimes disappear. So whether or not this force is emanating or constructing itself in this childlike manner and then evolves as we become adults, turns into the Greys, is another area of deep contemplation. We're not so sure. And again, goes back, Paul, to your amazing question. Are we dealing with one force entirely or multiple forces? And again, we have to ask the question, where are they? Where are they hanging out? Where are they all?
But if they can dematerialize, if this phenomena can dematerialize at will, because you said earlier, and we all share this view, well, the three of us do, I think, that there's a link between it all. So you've got the near-death experience, you've got the psychic experience, you've got the out-of-body experience, you've got the abduction experience. It all involves the D-physical. And all of them do across the board. So you're saying, where are they? And I don't mean I've got the answers to this, Philip, but perhaps, I mean, we're looking in that we know it latest rhetoric about, like you were talking about earlier, that they've changed it and now we're not looking for extraterrestrials. It seems to be we're looking closer to home. Maybe they're just literally a thought or a concentrated collection of thought away. Maybe there's a lot to be said for CE5 and things like that.
Yeah, I said, Chris, the reptilians, I mean, back in 1989, I was almost embarrassed to have admitted, and I had to, that there were 3 reptilians when I had been abducted with a grey that came earlier within the abduction scenario as it planned out. And these beings were the most horrific I had ever seen in my life. I mean, this is the real psychological issue, because during that time, most people within ufology believed that UFOs were spherical and that the greys were the only entities that were around, and that how could you possibly include the reptilians into that, because they didn't integrate within the I'll say here the kind of the construct that most people had, the model they had in their mind or formulated about UFOs already. But let me tell you, they were horrific. And there was no empathy, no feeling, no nothing. There was no communication whatsoever. And, it's hard for me, because trying to relay something that happened a long time ago is still as fresh within my mind as though it happened yesterday. No answers were given. What they did was savage. And I'm not going to get into the arguments of people telling me what they were and where they come from. I even had one person telling me the name of their high command. Please give me a break. Okay, because they were there. And it's interesting what Chris said, and you, Paul, about some kind of, AI construct. It is possible. I mean, if you watch the Hunger Games, I love the scene where the scientists had created that the world where those creatures were coming through, that ended up being real, and they had to kill them. Those in the Hunger Games had to kill them. That was kind of frightening. And of course, I use kind of like the headsets, and the holographic images there are absolutely astounding, and some of them look so real. So are we within an AI artificially construct? It is possible. Are we in some kind of game of life? It's possible.
Are we being played by the unknown other?
Exactly. But there is something obviously that is important for us to know, because we as humans, we're curious, and the phenomena presents itself to you, and it's like, well, I want to find out more what that's about. I've got to start looking. And why is that? I think that primarily looking into that, because it does change you, and not just for the bad, but for the good as well too. So most people, they're in arguments and loggerheads. Oh, they're this, they're that. We don't know what they are. But we can tell you that through theoretical content, we're trying to make these patterns in terms of what it's about and where it's emanating from. So, I understand that people have their personal experiences, and the Greys, we must not forget, have lied to their abductees. They literally lied to them about where they're from, Zeta Reticuli, and then it goes even further, or it's somewhere else. So the deception is on, and the deception is still occurring today because of the system. Not just the Pentagon, it's denial in us and all UFO researchers, paranormal researchers, whoever, what research you are in terms of that department of study, we know they're lying. And that's kind of shocking, because what do they know? What is it that they are protecting from us? Or are they not wanting us to know? Because as we said before, coming back around in a circle, that this will open a can of worms, and the system will collapse, because people will take back their own sovereignty, and they will know that the whole of their existence to a degree has been a lie. Manufactured servants to toil the soil, pay your taxes, do as said, do a job you don't really like doing, and and have all this fear and all this stuff thrown in your face, and then die. No, sorry, not with me, and not with many of you researchers. We're out there to try and dig for the facts.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're right. I think the bigger picture. I've said it before on here about. I think, and you mentioned it, Philip, earlier about the good and evil. There is a battle going on, and I think that battle, from what I've read over the years, this has been going on for millennia. And a lot of people, I go on a lot of forums, and not as many as I used to, but you'll see in there that people can't really understand how we got to this place, how the system got such control, how people within the system, knowing the outcome, are readily going along with it. Well, I think personally, there's an element of infiltration here, and I don't just mean by foreign bodies. I mean from another source entirely.
Yes.
Because to me, that's the only, I said it last week, the invasion of the body snatchers. To me, that's the only way it works. And if you go deep into some of that reptilian research, and it goes into other areas, you will see that there's a genetic part of this. And as you said, and that's the secret. that can never be revealed. That's the biggest secret. Because once you reveal that, then that is the can of worms, I feel. Because
yes,
without that genetic, without that, what do they call it? What they call it, the fifth column, don't they? Is it in the series
oh
V?
yes, the fifth columnist. Yeah, that's right.
The infiltration is, they call it the fifth column. Well, this is what we're dealing with here within the military, even within these aerospace companies. That fifth column will be there, and that's the way it works. They worked this out millennia ago in ancient times, I'm sure.
Yes, the Greys were merely, I believe, puppets, or still are, for their masters in order to try and find out what makes us tick. And I believe that, like most of the ancient codices, another author, Paul Anthony Wallace, brilliant author of the Eden Conspiracies, and many other researchers have discovered within the original codices that the story of creation is far different from the one that most people have been force-fed to believe. God loved them. And it tells a story of gods, of warring gods, reptilians as well too. So I believe that we are endowed with something that they are devoid. And I think this war goes back even at the beginning of time, and through the creation of perhaps matter, and where we have somehow come down and been trapped into this space of matter, and we're trying to get back, as it were. So this isn't our war, but we're involved in it, so to speak. And I believe that a lot of people, even those perhaps who are on that side, like in V, they had the rebels, didn't they? They had the fifth communist that was coming forward to help the humans because they disagreed with what their leaders were doing. I mean, that was with John, the Supreme Commander, and Diana, and all the others, Mike Donovan and all that, who were the rebels, as it were. And I find it interesting in V, on the original 10-hour miniseries, how the system made Mike Donovan look like a real criminal, and everyone believed it. And of course, you see this today with a lot of the news that goes on, and how that they will make someone look really bad. I mean, and like that's the telltale sign. If they are on someone's case 24/7 within the media, what's that telling you? It's telling you there's something wrong, that they don't want him there or her there, that they're yielding a lot of power and a lot of opinions they don't like, because our system is corrupted. It's all been hijacked by those at the top that are spreading all this down. And I believe they use the most awful methods and ways to try to keep this secret from the masses. So yeah, Chris and Paul, absolutely, I agree with you on that. We're all on the same page there, most definitely.
We aren't getting political, Philip. And I know Chris is thinking the same, that there's people and there's voices being suppressed. Exactly what you're saying, because they're not dangerous. They're dangerous to the powers that are wanting to control us. And
that's right.
Obviously, we're a channel devoted to unexplained phenomena, so we better not go there. But I could easily go on to a rant and probably get us closed.
Well, I won't say any more than that, but I will say to you that the system is so clever, but actually when they are allegedly, when they are approached singly, they're quite stupid. You can see most of the puppets already in the stage of life, without mentioning any names, who are pandering to their every needs, and they will be given, as I said before, the wards, they'll be given all the gongs, all the money, all the power, all the prestige, but that's all they have. But be very, very careful, because at the end of the day, this isn't the end, and this is not the beginning. This is the intermediary period of our evolution. There is so much more. But of course, we as the human race are blinded by that. We've been hoodwinked into the belief that we are just biological automatons with a sell-by date. We are robots, and we live and we die, and that is it. But the real part of us, the deeper part of us, that part that is linked deep in the heart, in the soul, as they call it, the spirit, nothing, as I've said before, nothing can destroy that, nothing, and not even they, and they know that. But I think this is all to do with their survival. Whatever this intelligence is, wherever it comes from, they are adamant to survive, and the only way they can survive is through us. So they've got this pantheon of themselves as the gods, the nameless, faceless ones, and they've constructed this power system, and of course this fear. So it's something to do with fear, or an excretion within the mind, the body, that they feed from. And I'm not going to go into the darker aspects of that, which I have known about from some other researchers and a journalist of all people that I will never mention, who revealed some things. So those at the top are into some very deep and dark things in order to summon or produce the energy or whatever it is that they need to sustain themselves within our system of reality. Because once the can of worms has been opened, Chris and Paul, their game is over. It's finished for them. It's done.
So what we want is a worm can opener. Really. and I didn't think of that. A good friend of mine said it to me the other day. And he wrote me an email and he entitled it "Worm Can Opener." That's what we need.
I think it's amazing because I always say we are all part of this. I mean, all of us are involved. All of us are respected. We have our own thoughts, our own theories. No one is any better than anyone else. We're all, and all those that, this, that, and the other. No, we're all part of it. You are part of the divine. You're part of the connection. And it's wonderful when you do start to question. And we all do like those fear factors. I travel the site now for the Dogman sites, and come on, a lot of them are CGI generated. You're like, please give me a break. They are good, some of them. One of them was fantastic. But the reality is that the phenomena eludes us. We don't get very clear pictures of it because it's operating obviously on higher frequencies of reality. So it's hard for our equipment to home in on it. Rather like the signals to your mobile phone network systems that carry the information. We can't see it. Yeah,
I'm aware, Philip, that we've got about 8 or 9 minutes left. I don't know if there's a direction that Chris wants to take this now. Is there any particular aspect of it that you want to touch on, Chris?
Not necessarily. I mean, shall we just try and plow on through some of these questions? Philip, is something, Philip? Do you want to?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Are you okay?
Yeah,
I think is Bobby Dazzler saying that is AI a multiple download implant by the phenomena. I've heard some people talk about this before, about the final sort of infiltration by this is AI, and if people are accepting of it in a very minor way, that's all that's required. Because we have, I have read some literature on the literature written by experiencers that this phenomena does interact with technology and utilizes it as well. So it's an interesting point.
It'll be we'll have to put a virus into it, won't we, on some level, I think, to get rid of it.
Absolutely. Do you believe they are here partly due to the fact that they don't have a soul leading to the Hyper program?
Yes, I wrote about that back in 1996 and in some previous books about the correlation between that they are devoid of the soul or spirit and they want it, and they're trying to create a new species, the hybridization program, in order to infuse that part of them with us, and perhaps able to propel that manufactured part back to back to where we return to from when we finished here, to source, to those other realities, I suppose you'd call it. So it's an interesting speculation, but we also have to consider whether or not the human experiment has failed and that they are creating a new genus to survive somewhere else, to exist somewhere else. We don't know, because we came from somewhere, and not through Darwin's theory of evolution. I believe that the mammal was, or maybe the hominid, the ape, was a fine suitor to be part of the infusion of alien DNA and of course what is now the human. But there is a part of us that is different, that is not from here. I believe that.
Yes, back. I have noticed that a lot of UFO researchers have had paranormal experiences. Is there a correlation?
I think so.
Yes, I believe there is, Pierre Sabac, and I have to say that this is accounted for a lot of situations, and those that have had UFO experiences or even paranormal experiences as a result of a UFO being seen. Skinwalker Ranch, for many people know that it's not the only famous place out there, but it's one area that was good in being able to. And there's Pierre's book. One of his brilliant books.
Heavy going, but well worth reading. Pierre Sabac.
Yeah, and so I say here that we don't know. There are correlations to be made between the two, and that is interesting. And I just want to get Pierre Sabac's book. Just bear with me.
And I say heavy going, Pierre, because of the in-depth research that you have done. And Chris knows this. Chris is a great friend of yours. We need you on here.
And here is Pierre's new book, Angelic Invasion, a brilliant, and you're in there, Paul. We're in there as well too.
Oh, thank you.
The research in there, and it's a beautiful book. And that is Pierre's new book. So, you know, Pierre has got a website. You can order it there. Absolutely incredible, astounding work in there. So thank you, Pierre. And yeah, and I think that, you know, Skinwalker Ranch, as I said, is an area that absolutely clearly shows that it's not just about UFOs being seen, it's also about this strange phenomena, the appearance of the skinwalker. You know, orbs, lights, and sometimes the orbs are different colors. I think the reds are bad. And it's kind of like, you know, so there is a connection. Paul and Chris, we agree with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think disclosure will come from politicians?
No.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now, me and another UFO researcher wanted to approach Parliament. We did write a letter, and I'll say it now, to Theresa May, because she had been instrumental in the Gary McKinnon case. And we thought she'd help us because we wanted to bring a panel together to talk about the reality of UFOs. We actually did that. I have the letter. It was all sent. And of course they'd want to help us. Of course they will. No, we got nothing back. Silence. That tells you everything.
And just before we get to the next question, because you've not promoted yourself really, and we've both done it with Pierre, and it's well worth doing. But this is Ronald's book, your brother's,
yes,
Illusions, which is an absolutely incredible book. And I know, Chris, you echo my thoughts. And we've got Terrestrial Trespassers.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I did want to ask you is, where are you finding the time?
I have an appointment with an eternity, and I don't wish to be late. Now, I have a new book as well too that's coming out later in June by me and my dear good friend Chris John Mays, called The Eternal Avatar, and that deals with the soul consciousness. That's coming out from Brandon Thompson's Rigiginal Publishing. I've got to just point that out there, and that's about the soul, spirit, the war, and all the rest of it. So that's called The Eternal Avatar by Philip Kinsella and Chris John Mays. He's an artist, author, poet, a healer, and a clairvoyant. So it's going to be. We're really looking forward to that project coming out. So I just thought I'd plug that.
No, that's cool. No worries.
And go on, Chris. Yorkshire Grey.
What are your thoughts about the witness brought forward by Ross Coulthart? This seems to be the advent of woo. Yeah, I was saying that earlier, Yorkshire Grey, about I was surprised about that little sprinkle of woo there. I wasn't expecting that at all.
I have to say, I do like Ross. I think he wants the truth like anyone else. We don't know who the spin doctors are. I mean, I want to believe in Grush. I want to believe in those other people. I want, but we just keep coming to this wall every single time. And that is telling us the phenomena is real, but the system, those humans that are obviously operating from there, are wanting so desperately, no, we can't tell the public. And my question is, why? Why can't you tell the public? We kind of have an idea, but we want to know why. I would give my thumb to go into that UFO installation unit to examine the hardware if they've got it, and the biological matter, even if it's hardware constructed from the mental process of the mind that comes into our reality. I would do that. I want to see the pilots. I want to see what they've got. And maybe researchers could give them some answers. Did they not even think about that? If they're still puzzled? No.
Do you know something, Philip? And I know we're going to get that question in, but this could have ran for 4 hours. We hadn't even touched on what we were going to talk about to you.
No. You're right. You make a good point. Everything you said is true. Where do you go with it? I mean, Ross is almost like the guy you would cherry pick for the job, almost. But at the same time, I agree with you. I think he does seem to want. Look, we don't know these guys personally, do we? They're just a personality on screen doing a job, as far as we're concerned. And I'm sure Ross does want it pushed along like the rest of us want it pushed along. But he's an intelligent man. He will know for sure that that it isn't going to happen. He's just playing his little part. That's all. And
Yeah.
that's all he can do at his end. He's just a journalist at the end of the day.
That's it. That's it. Oh, thank you, Pierre. Bless your heart. Thank you so much.
That's the least we can do. And thank you, Pierre. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the Mull of Kintyre Chinook crash? Was this connected with what was allegedly stored at Macranash? I don't know.
I don't
anything
know
about this.
No,
I know the wonderful song Mull of Kintyre, but I don't know about the crash, so I can't answer that.
But I do know the person who was asking the question, and we'd love to have you on, even if you wanted to come on for half an hour and share some of that with us, because you've had your own experience as well, which I've spoke to you about. So,
by all means,
yeah.
Brett, does Philip think that smart meters technology being brought to the public to alter human vibration, maybe even kill off humans for the Great Reset?
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I know one thing: it's just a new way of making them more money and robbing the public of their good money, and changing things. It's possible that there are energies that's being released from certain, devices. I mean, there are certain illnesses that's increasing strangely. Can't go into too much detail here, but they've been noted, whether it's in the air, in the food, in the water, or technology. We don't know, but it's quite alarming because a lot of people are becoming ill. And I think this is cause for concern, but nothing's being done. Nothing's being investigated because they all are connected to those in charge that are telling them what to do. I hope one day that there is mass rebellion, people fight for what they believe in and bring this system of power down and then construct a new, fairer governance, one that's more empathic, more understanding. But at the moment, no, I don't think any of that's going to change, not for some time.
A question for all of you: what's your thoughts on coincidences that seem to happen the more you dig into this subject? That's from Linny.
I saw it earlier, and I know we have talked about coincidences, and it is uncanny that you can talk about a certain part of a subject, not necessarily unexplained phenomena, and suddenly it crops up the same day. Hours later, you walk around the corner and see a friend. And I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you think is this an unexplained phenomena? Chris, Philip, what do you think?
Well, synchronicity does seem to play a part when you start getting involved with research, whether or not there's a higher part of yourself that's guiding you to your truths. We can only speculate. One can only speculate as to that hypothesis. But it is true, because it's interesting, I think, when you start using your mind outside the box, you start to send your intentions out into the psychic internet, as I call it. Yes, and they might be drawn to other energies matched by your frequency that come into your reality or connect with you. Absolutely, totally amazing. And it is real, yes. So strap yourselves down for a rough ride, but you've got to hold on when you're on this journey to UFO, encrypted, and paranormal research.
Just before we go any further, Philip, are you all right for five minutes or so?
Yes.
Yeah. Paul, are you okay?
I'm good to go. I noticed our moderator says my highs are hurting now. just been hard at it fielding these questions, right. Lorraine. Big thank you to you tonight.
We'll do a couple more minutes and then we'll end it. And then I'm sure Philip would be more than happy to come back anyway. And we'd love to have you back.
I think I don't mean next week, but sooner the better, because this could have just ran. I think we realise that now.
Yeah.
What I did want to say is, Karen and Lee, thanks for the super chats. Before I forget, again, very much appreciated as always. I'm sure Paul feels the same. It's Absolutely. we don't ask for it, but we do appreciate it when we get it, and it's it's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Stephen, Colin, thank you. Has your brother had it? Yes, when he was 13, and after the appearance of the silver orb with our maternal grandmother, he had one that was linked with the doctors. They were heavily suited. You couldn't see their faces, and very different from mine. And his happened, when we were 13 years of age. And of course, I was 20 when I had mine, and we're 7 minutes apart from each other. I'm not saying that the beings operate from time, like 7 years from his to mine to 7 minutes. No, so his experience was very different. And this is the thing, the phenomena is so very clever, because if we had repeated contact with the same force over and over again, we would start to be able to put a lot more of those clues together. But because the phenomena is multifaceted, it's almost nigh impossible for us to understand the force behind it. And let me tell you, nothing was explained to him and nothing was explained to me. We have to try and work it out ourselves. So if we are dealing with an intelligent species, I would be more than willing to open my arms to them and let them tell me all about their problems and our problems and how we can solve them. Nothing.
7 minutes apart. Who's the oldest?
I am.
I am. and does it show in hierarchy?
No, not normally. I mean, I'm sometimes brought down a peg or two, and rightfully deserved, I suppose. But as you know, so. But as I said, we're all important, and I think it's wonderful that we're all connected on this level with regards to the research. And it's just amazing that all of us work together and think on those levels. And that's what it's all about: thinking outside the box, trying to push yourself beyond the level of the normal processing. I'm not talking about bringing some ridiculous theories out, but trying to think about how it all connects.
Yeah, I think that's it. That kind of answers Denise's question. If they can mind speak, why don't they tell us what they want? Well, good question. Good question.
There we are. You've answered it yourself, Denise. We don't know, because we would be more than willing to listen to an intelligence that would trust us to give us the information that can be proven. That hasn't happened. And so this is why we've got a problem. And the secrecy, the crashes, remote regions, the contact, singular, in nature, not on a united level. So this is highly suspicious.
Yeah, and generally heading, no, I haven't seen the grey, although sometimes when I get up in the morning and look in the mirror, I do think that is far too much time sat in front of this monitor working, and I really need some vitamin D. Anyway, that's another story.
Excellent.
If this battle between good and evil has been going on for millennia, Chris, and you may well be right, where do we fit in?
Massive question.
We must fit in somewhere in the food
chain. What we do know,
chain.
like you said, Philip, earlier, what we do know is that we do fit in, and we are a big part of it. And I think we have a lot going off what I've read, and over the years, the conclusion I'm drawing is that we have a lot more power than we think we do. They are clearly afraid of us. I mean, and I don't just mean them. I mean the powers that be.
The powers that be.
The powers that be are definitely afraid of us. So sometimes I know it's easy to look at the TV and the media, and we feel weak sometimes, and we feel like we can't make a dent. But I think secretly, we can. And I think, by the way, earlier, I think there's a reason that they went into certain nations and destroyed indigenous cultures, because of certain practices that they were doing. If you just look at their beliefs, that's what they would outlawing, bringing in new rules, new religions to just get rid of that stuff. Well, you only have to look at what they were practicing to know that seems to me where the power is, and they know that. So yeah, sad but true.
We may have another question, I don't know, but one of the last words from me is don't forget Thursday, guys. If you're still with us, and I'm sure you are, we've still got over 100 people in chat. Truth Proof, 7 p.m. Thursday, myself and Les, and hopefully we've got D.A. Roberts on as our guest.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to end it there. So thank you very much, Philip. Really enjoyed it. As I knew we would just wind you up and let you go, sort of thing.
Absolutely, Chris. It's been brilliant. We haven't had to do anything, have we? Which has been really good.
Well, I have to thank you, Paul and Chris, for allowing me on your show, and all of your good team here, and all the people that have been asking wonderful questions. We could be here for hours, and of course, but I have to say thank you to all of you, and I'm really very grateful and humbled. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Thanks you guys for tuning in again tonight. We really appreciate your support, and we will see you next week. See you next Tuesday.